Hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host, Keegan, and this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And today we have a very special guest, and her name is Diane Konkin. I did say that correct, right?
You did, yeah. It's very good.
I have sometimes a habit of getting people's last names just so wrong or just right on point. So I just want to make sure I get it right.
Thank you, but irrelevant. I'm just here to share what I know and really hope to help some people today, like understand what's going on in their minds and in their bodies. And it's simple and very powerful. I don't think you've heard this before. So everybody stay tuned.
Alrighty. Well, you bring a whole lot to the table, and we've had our discussion beforehand, so I'm kind of caught up. But why don't you go ahead and tell the audience who you are, a little bit about yourself, your story if you want, and what you do.
Yeah, sure. Well, my company is called Advanced Mind Health. That's my practice. It's like what I like to call my no repeat client therapy practice. I specialize in self-sabotage, anxiety, depression, low confidence, and specifically substance use habits as well, which is a big one. And my history is I've had my practice for 4 years, but I come from a background of working in entertainment. I was a stage manager for theater for over 30 years. My late husband, who passed away 11 years ago, when I met him, I was like 20, I think, and he was in his 30s, and he was a professional musician. He was a drummer touring across Canada and went back to school to teach. And so that's where we met and fell in love and started a life together. And little did I know, because he wasn't sharing this with a new relationship, but he was a recovering drug addict, and he got himself off of a speed and MDMA, I guess they call it in the 70s as well. And when we were together about 7 years, it was about 3 years into purchasing our home together, he crashed with depression. He had only what I could call like this crazy nervous breakdown, which really was frightening to me because I'd never experienced anyone going through that before, where he was just sobbing and rolling on the floor, what's happening to me. And so, you know, when he kind of calmed down and we took him to get some help, basically, you know, he was diagnosed with depression, but he was like, you know what, these doctors are full of shit. Sorry for my language, but, you know, full of BS. And, you know, he tried a bunch of different cocktails of meds, but he was also drinking heavily at the time. Like that was his self-medication, right? And which we all know works opposite to antidepressants, because alcohol is a depressant. So fast forward years, he's really developed a self-medication problem with alcohol, and he started hiding it, and he became out of control, and he was functioning, but it's something that he just couldn't do without until he kind of spun out several times. So in and out of rehab, to make the story fast, 3 times. He finally got on a different cocktail of meds, which included lithium, which completely kind of zoned him out. He didn't like it, and he had to leave his passion of music, leave all his friends, all of that stuff. And then he basically became a shell of a man. And he was sober 6 years when he passed, and he passed just before his 64th birthday. And that was 11 years ago. So in a way, I felt like it was really hard to see him struggle. And I did everything I could for him, not knowing anything about mental health. And in the 90s, there was no help. But, you know, a few years after he passed is when I started to grieve. And I started to look for therapy for myself. And I started to drink a lot more because, you know, it was just, I never could with him around. And it's like, this is acceptable. This is the way I'm going to numb myself and deal with it, you know? And it got to the point where I was like, this is not healthy and I need to do something about it. or else. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I found this method that I practice now, Keegan. It's called Rapid Transformational Therapy.
Hmm.
And it
Okay.
literally changed my life. I started learning it and training in it. And through training, it took me about a year to train and certify. Um,
Wow.
yeah. And then plus all my practice sessions and that kind of thing, my practical. But through that, I learned so much about how the mind works, how emotions work, how neuroscience, the new research in neuroscience is kind of shaping the
Mm-hmm.
future of therapy. How, like, why on my website I say therapy redefined, because
Mm-hmm.
it's completely different now that we know how the mind works and how simple it is. And it's not complicated like
Mm-hmm.
doctors once think. Even, what we hear, the term we used to hear a lot, chemical imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing. I mean, we create that through our
Mm-hmm.
thoughts, our words, how we care for ourselves, like
Mm-hmm.
we create those chemicals in ourselves. So, I mean, yes, this is a holistic approach, but I'm a very concrete kind of person, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
just saying before you started recording that, I'm not your therapist that's going to say, go do more journaling, go do more yoga or work out more. I'm not that kind of therapist, because there is a root cause of all of our emotional struggles. And
Mm-hmm.
especially with addiction, right? Like, we're not born addicts. This
Mm-hmm.
is something we develop, like a tumor. It's not who we are, it's something that has grown inside of us,
Yeah.
that root cause. And when we get to the bottom of it and start dissolving it and breaking it down and reverse engineering it, even in just 1 2 hour session. I've done it with clients hundreds of times, where I just take away their cravings, because when you work at that deep neurological level
Mm-hmm.
and you really communicate with your mind in the understanding of it, it completely starts to shift, and people feel it. At the end of the session, they'll say, wow, I feel like a weight has been lifted. I finally get it.
Mm-hmm.
And because our minds are, sorry, just to finish up this answer, but our subconscious minds, we learn this somewhere in school, but it controls and drives and influences 95 to 97% of our behaviors, our decisions, our actions, how we think, act, and feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I say to my clients that have a substance use issue, I say, when you're trying to resist and you can't help it and you end up picking up, it's
Mm-hmm.
not your fault, because your mind is driving you to pick up.
Mm-hmm.
And you are trying to change that action with only 5% of your decision making power, right?
Mm.
Because this is your pattern. Your mind
Mm-hmm.
loves patterns. And when you
Yeah.
first picked up, everybody remembers the first hit, the first drink, the first everything. They say, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, it was like euphoria. And our minds are wired. We are all born wired to crave that pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
and our minds sort of drive us away from pain, right? Like, if
Mm-hmm.
we have food poisoning, right, you can't even smell that food anymore, or you start getting nauseous. So
Yeah.
that's your mind saying, stay away from that food. Last time
Mm-hmm.
you had it, it caused you pain.
Mm-hmm.
But your mind is saying, oh, you're not feeling good. You're feeling guilt, shame, and remorse from all of the substance you had yesterday. I know how to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it drives you towards that pleasure.
Yeah.
So there's certain ways in which your mind helps you survive, because the number one job of the mind is to help you survive.
Mm-hmm.
But the number one rule of the mind is it will always, always, always do what you tell it. It will do exactly what it thinks you want it to do. And when you work at that deep level, then that's how I shift my clients.
Wow. That's a
It's a
whole.
lot. I know, it's a lot. I could talk forever, but I try to kind of keep it simple. But it's all run from your subconscious mind.
Wow.
Yeah. Should I
Okay.
talk a little bit about how I do that and what RTT is?
Yeah. We can totally talk about that, but I just also kind of want to get real quick your perspective of what it was like to watch someone go through addiction, because that is one of the things a lot of people don't really kind of understand, is that the addict or alcoholic is suffering, but so is the loved ones around them. And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
because that's what drove you to even get to RTT, correct? So,
Yeah, well, I found RTT years after my husband passed.
mhm,
But when I knew that I could specialize in a method of therapy that was brand new,
mhm,
that could help people like my husband who suffered for like 30 years. Like he
mhm,
was 63 when he passed. He was only sober 6 years,
mhm,
but he became an alcoholic or drug addict like as a teenager in high school when he first
yeah,
started playing bands, right? Doing
mhm,
it socially.
yeah,
But he talked about the shame he was meant to feel as a child, how his
mhm,
mom had depression, how his dad was an alcoholic and a gambling addict, right?
mhm,
So people think that it's genetic, but it's
mhm,
not genetic. We live what we learn.
mhm,
It's generational more so. And you
mhm,
have it's there's a way to reverse that. I
mhm.
promise you. I do it all the time with my clients. So,
Seeing, that's just really awesome that you're out here doing this, because as someone that has suffered from alcoholism and addiction myself, there's tons of things that I wish that had existed years ago, or maybe even things that I would have even maybe tried. But that was the thing, is that was totally not willing and ready years ago. And that's the thing, is that people have to be ready to be able to try different things to better themselves.
yeah, well, they have to be at the stage of readiness of I want to
Mm.
quit. But
Yes.
this is not hard work. That's the
Mm.
difference, right?
Okay.
It's not going to counseling or group sessions where you have to sit there and learn about all your emotions and because I know this. My husband used to get excited about it the first time. He was also hilarious. He called it drunk school, where he went to like yeah, where he went to like an outpatient program.
Uh-huh.
So he was like in school from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., like in
Mhm.
this addiction recovery center. And then he'd come home and he'd bring
Mhm.
his little notebook and he'd talk to me. He'd be so excited. He's like, look, we're learning how to identify our emotions, which he'd never
Mhm.
done before. But then, of course, that all goes out the window when he gets triggered or when he's like that self loathing comes into
Mhm.
play and then he always said, I don't like myself. And I just
Mhm.
never understood that. And at the time I didn't either. But
Yeah.
this is why I became so codependent. That was my illness, right? But like I found RTT years after he passed, but what I really did to help myself was go to Al-Anon. If it
Uh-huh.
wasn't for Al-Anon, I probably would have gone crazy. Like I swear to
Mhm.
God, and I mean that in the like I would have checked myself in
Yeah.
because, you know, I just watched a master class on this in my learning platform for RTT about a couple of months ago, mostly based on narcissism, like being in a
Mhm.
relationship, like a toxic relationship. But when you are trying to help somebody and you can't, because you were asking about watching somebody go through this,
Mhm.
it starts to shift the brain patterns. Like you change at a neurological level watching somebody do this and not being able to help them, that feeling of helplessness. And here's the thing, I'm not saying this to make the person that is struggling with addiction to feel
Mhm.
guilty, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
But I'm saying it so that the person with addiction can encourage their loved ones to go to Al-Anon.
Mhm.
Because, and my husband always used to say, like, if I had cancer, you would be in a cancer support group, how to
Mhm.
support your loved ones with cancer. Or if
Mhm.
you had a child with Down syndrome or disabilities. Like, you would be with other parents to learn how to support that child. It's no different, and there's no shame in it.
Nope.
Addiction is a disease, but it's this insidious kind of, like I say, this emotional tumor that sort of grows. And, it basically comes from childhood trauma. Like, when I work with my clients, okay, here's how RTT works.
Yeah.
It's it's typically one session. Sometimes I do a second. Once in a while I do a third. But the client that comes to me has to want to stop. And they have to be able to stop for at least a day, right? So that, because they have to come to the session clean and be honest about that, or else it's not going to work, and I'm not going to treat you. That's unfair to both of us, right?
Yeah.
So do whatever you can do. Go to detox, even if you go to detox for a couple of days. But if you have the kind of addiction, not have it, because I don't like to say it's yours. You never say I am. Just say, I have this thing in me, right? It's not part of you. It's like this tumor. But if you are struggling with this, or if you have this thing clinging to you, and you can get through a day or two without it, but then you kind of fall back into it. It's the same reason why New Year's resolutions don't work, right? We can say, well, I'm going to give up sugar. I'm going to give up, buying shoes. I'm going to give up whatever. I'm going to get to the gym more. And we can kind of manage it on our own for a while, but then boom, we fall back into our old patterns, because our mind is like, no, we need this. And so what I do is I align your subconscious operating system with your conscious mind, right? The 95% and the 5%, I make them align so that your subconscious mind knows what you want, because it's just going along with what it learned. It's like when you get in the back of a cab, you need to tell the driver where to go, or else it's just going to drop you off to the same place it always drops you off, right? So the session works. It's a combination, Rapid Transformational Therapy. It was developed by Marissa Peer in the UK, who is a psychotherapist for over 30 years. And she started learning hypnosis and developing or incorporating it into her practice. And her clients would get better really fast, because she wanted a way to help people fast, because she sees these people week after week, and she sees their emotional pain. And she said, if you had chest pain and you went to the doctor, he wouldn't say, come back next week and let's talk about it, right? And I don't have anything against talk therapy. If you like it and it works for you, great. But if it doesn't work for you, or if you want something more powerful, then this is your method, because it's a combination. So people get kind of freaked out about the word hypnosis, but basically it's just being in a relaxed state. Okay. Like, if you were to answer questions with your eyes open, looking at a person, or if you were to close your eyes and just take a deep breath and relax your body, those answers would come to you much easier, and they would come to you more honestly and openly. And so basically what I do is I just walk you through, and this is all on Zoom. I see all my clients on Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not in person. I'm in Niagara area in Canada, but I have people, like clients all over Canada, the States, UK, South Africa. I'm in a bunch of different places in the world. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, so when you relax your body, Stanford University did a study on this in 2016, where as soon as you start to relax your body, which is your nervous system, that your subconscious mind is controlling, right? When your mind doesn't have to worry about like driving or walking or crossing the street or making lunch or whatever, it can just focus like internally. It looks for direction, and it opens up, and it becomes much more receptive and accessible. So it's like a guided meditation, right?
Okay.
For a couple of minutes just to get your body relaxed. And then I just take you through a simple series of questions. I'll say, like, let's go back to the cause, the reason, and the root of where this addiction started. You're going to go back. Your memory, your mind is going to show you why the very first time, why this addiction started in you. And inevitably, all of my clients will go back to a time when they were like under 10 years old. And you're not drinking when you're 5 years old or 6 years old. But they you hold on to these beliefs that you develop from these feelings, right? Because the way a child's mind is formed, because your subconscious mind is formed mainly between the ages of 0 and 7. And it becomes our operating system. And, I heard somebody, a really amazing research scientist, what's his name? The Biology of Belief, he wrote. Sorry, it slips me right now, but that was his book, The Biology of Belief. And he really wasn't into any of this stuff. Now he's gone total woo, right? But he says the Jesuits knew this hundreds of years ago when they said, show me a boy of 7 and I will show you a man, because our minds are formed between those years. And then we carry that operating system with us. But now we understand through the latest research in neuroscience that we can shift this. Everybody's heard of, or maybe you haven't, but there's a term now floating around called neuroplasticity. And it's basically the belief that your mind is flexible. Like if you learn how to play an instrument, then your brain changes. It makes room for those new pathways of skill that you're learning. Or if you're learning, the meaning of a new word, or whatever, you're learning the words to a song, right? That you repeat over and over again, right? Because this is how the mind learns, with repetition. Then that's in there. And so what I do during an RTT session is I really start to find those feelings, find the beliefs that were caused from these feelings, and then we start to question them, because you will only hold on to a belief as long as you don't question it, right? But when you start questioning it, it's like I say to my clients, you used to believe in Santa Claus, but as you grow older and you go, wait a minute, there's no big red fat guy in a suit delivering presents all over the world, right? I don't have to believe that belief anymore because I'm not a kid anymore. And so I take them through this session. I guide them. I lead them. It's like my clients are just, they say it feels so good during the session. And I'll say, does this make sense? Is this working? And they'll be like, wow, that I've never thought of it that way. That is so powerful. Feel a change. I feel it. Like I feel it so deeply. This is amazing. Yeah, of course. And then once the root cause is dissolved, then we start to install what they want. I want to be free and clean. I want to be with people at a party, see them having a drink, and feel completely disinterested or indifferent, which is the opposite of loving something. It's not hating something. It's just you are indifferent and disinterested to it. And this is what my clients achieve by the time I take them through it. So it's a 2-hour session that does the work. And then at the end of the session, I leave them with a 15-minute personalized audio.
Wow.
This is where I put my most work into. And I have a template, but I include everything from the session as well. Name in it, everything that they want from their intake form, everything that they see, how they see themselves moving forward, how they visualize their lives without this addiction hanging on to them. I use cognitive behavioral therapy. I use neuro-linguistics programming, which is basically fancy words for saying, self-talk and visualizations. But when you're in that relaxed state, it sinks in so much deeper, because your mind is open up. And when you question that and change that, and then you install what you want, the clients are just blown away. I was telling you before we started, I worked with a doctor in New York who had a drug and alcohol problem in the 90s. and gave it up quickly, kind of
Mm-hmm.
got scared into it because he got in a bad car accident and almost killed himself and someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's got a beautiful family, but he was still having cravings every day and getting triggered, but managing it. And within 48 hours, they were completely gone. Because what I ask the client to do is, now that the work is done with the audio, or sorry, with the session, you listen to that audio every day for 28 days. Because
Mm-hmm.
how long does it take to form a habit?
About a month.
Minimum of 21 days. Right. So I say, okay, minimum, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you will notice huge changes in how
Mm-hmm.
you feel, how you're thinking, because the old you're when all of these thoughts bubble up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm never going to find love. I'm worthless. I'm useless. What am I even doing here? Like all of these sort of self-loathing, self-deprecating thoughts, that's not coming from you. It's coming from your mind, because it wants you to use, because it knows it's going to feel good. Your body doesn't want drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
It's your
That's true.
mind that's compelling you, because it doesn't care, if you're happy or sad. It just, like, doing this, it just wants you to stay alive. And a lot
Yeah.
of addicts, you hear, if I didn't have drugs, I would have probably killed myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many times do we hear that story?
A lot.
And so that's your mind's way of like helping you survive. But
Mm-hmm.
when you reverse that and say, yeah, the drugs used to be pleasure, or the alcohol used to be pleasure, but now it's pain. And
Mm-hmm.
what will give me pleasure is if I can remain clean and free and wake up in the morning and feel good about myself, feel
Mm-hmm.
good about my life, feel good about moving through my day without even thinking about alcohol, without even thinking about picking up, because I have this to look forward to. I want to start a business. I want to learn how to play an instrument. I want to do this. I want to write more. I want to get back to work at something, right? Like, that's what I want to do. And when you tell your mind that in this relaxed state,
Mm-hmm.
with the repetition of the audio, it gets it. It's like learning the words to a song, right?
Yeah.
You have to listen to those words over and over and over again, and then they're in there. And then guess what happens? You're moving through the day, and all of a sudden the song will pop into your mind, right?
Yep.
Because your mind's like, you were repeating this to me. Now I'm repeating it back to you because this is what you want. It's like your assistant,
Mm-hmm.
but what it learned was from so long ago. So now we need to upgrade it, update it. The same way as you upgrade your software in your computer, I help you upgrade the software in your mind.
Oh, wow. But we don't come up with a little fancy update button that says, hey, this is outside of normal business hours. Do you want to update your computer now?
No, there's no clicking of buttons, but that's what you use. Like, if you want to get in shape, you hire a personal trainer, right? I'm your personal mental trainer.
There you
So
go.
you come to me. People say it's like a spa. Like I say, when you go for a massage, you just relax and somebody works on your muscles and you come out feeling really good. With me, you come to me, you relax, and I help you work on your thoughts, work out all those knots in your thoughts that are just like, I don't want to think that anymore. Like, let's get rid of that and work on that. And then you come out of it going, whoa, like they feel so much lighter in their heart, because what controls the energy in their body is from their mind, right? Like, emotions are just chemicals that your mind drops down into your body, right?
Yeah.
Like the same as if we close our eyes and we think about biting into a lemon, our mouth will water, because we told our mind we were biting a lemon. And so our mouth waters. And that's how powerful these words and images are. Like, our mind will react to them.
Wow. Okay. Give me just a second. Okay. So whenever we're sitting there and we're trying to say upgrade everything, we have to get that old stuff out. right? Because, or can we sit there and do it with it still there? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand perfectly what you're saying. And here's the thing. A lot of clients are a bit afraid because they think they have to revisit old trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Not the case, right? And then
Yeah.
a lot of times our mind won't show us that because our
Mm-hmm.
mind knows it's painful. I worked with a client who endured horrific child abuse. Like her
Mm-hmm.
parents should have been sent to jail for years.
Mm.
Hers was the only intake form out of over 300 that I actually teared up reading her intake form. Like it was that bad.
Man.
And she came to me, and despite all this, she left home when she was 18, got married, went right to a toxic relationship, as a lot of women do, right? Because you attract what you think you are worth. And then got out of that and is now with a really great partner. But she still has this submissiveness to her, even though she worked her way up in the corporate world to be like this amazing executive. And she loves her job and she does it really well. She works in logistics, but she was having a horrible time, and so she came to me, and in her session, not one instance of the abuse came up. And because her mind was protecting her from that, and that's okay. That's okay. But what we do is not go to the actual event, but what's more important is the feeling that they feel in that moment. Because here's the equation, right? Our thoughts create our feelings. And if they stay there long enough, they create beliefs, right? And our feelings and our beliefs will create our actions. So it all starts with our thoughts, right? Like if I have to learn a new tech platform and I go, oh God, this is going to be awful. I hate tech. And I tell myself that, guess what? It's going to be a really unpleasant experience. But if I say to myself, hell, I've done it before. I know I'm smart. I know I'm capable. I can navigate through it. I just have to take it one step at a time. I can figure this out. It's going to be easy. If I tell myself that, guess what? It's easy, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you don't have to revisit the trauma, but you have to, what I do with my clients is connect with the feelings they've felt that their mind is showing them. Because those feelings turn into beliefs. And what are the beliefs? I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable. I can't connect. I'm different. I don't belong. What I want in this world is never going to be available to me. All of those things, those beliefs that you start to form and carry with you into adulthood. When in the session, I help through a series of tools, which are brilliant, that no other psychotherapist, unless they've trained with Marissa or know this method, really has the language or specific tools from. This is specific to Rapid Transformational Therapy, and it is brilliant. It's an award-winning method. Doctors are learning it. Therapists are learning it to help their clients. Although I did have an interview with a therapist my first year of practice who wanted to know more about what I did. And when I told her I can, help people in one session, typically, she went, but what do you do for repeat clients? And I thought, how sad is that? Like, I said, don't you want to help your clients faster? But the truth is, and not with everyone. Please, I'm not slamming talk therapists because what they do is important, right?
Yes.
But there are, sadly, some of them that will, rely on that revenue, right? That weekly revenue. Not everybody, but it happens. So that's why I say to people when they ask me what I do, I say I have a no repeat client therapy practice. And people are like, what? It just makes their jaw drop. And it's like, yeah, because this is not your mom's therapy. This is the future of therapy, how it's going to go. Absolutely. And we forget that hypnosis was developed like hundreds of years ago. And the first the first time it was developed was to actually help people with mental health issues. It was only like in the 30s and 40s where it started to get really cheesy with the stage shows and stuff, right? But and those are hypnotists. Those aren't hypnotherapists. So there's a big difference.
Big difference.
Yeah.
So with there being so much to this, there's also not a lot at all. It sounds like that's the weird
It's very
thing,
simple.
right?
It's very simple. Yeah. And like I was saying earlier, like if people have questions,
Mm-hmm.
you're welcome to call me. Just go to my company is advancedmindhealth.ca.
Mm-hmm.
Just book a call with me on my calendar. You get free 30 minutes. Anybody, as you can tell, I love sharing this information. I love telling people it's not their fault,
Mm-hmm.
especially people that are struggling with addiction. If
Mm-hmm.
you pick up and you wake up the next morning and you feel that awful guilt, shame, remorse, I know. I've witnessed my husband do it a million times. I did it myself when I was drinking to get over my grief, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't believe I got to the addiction stage, but I definitely started having cravings and it definitely was becoming a habit. And when I knew, and if I didn't witness my husband struggling for so many years, like over 25 years, then it could have gone that way. But I knew I had that experience and I was like, I don't want to be like that. And because I had RTT, I knew how to help myself, right? I knew how to put myself in hypnosis and do the self-talk, do the visualizations. And when I did that, I completely didn't even think about it for days, because I told my mind what I wanted. And our mind's job is to do what we tell it.
Yeah. And I love how you actually have went back and you talk about how the addiction kind of works, because like it's said in some rooms that I've been in, drugs and alcohol were the solution at first.
Absolutely.
Until they became the problem. And a lot of people don't know, like in my example, it was drugs and alcohol were the solution, then they became the problem, but I already know how to take care of problems. I just didn't have enough of that substance. And so it was like just this repeated cycle until it got to, again, like where you said, where it was, if I didn't have it, I would have finished it, and so then I decided I'm going to just kind of enjoy the long run, because I was like, if I quit now, the going cold turkey could kill me. And so I decided to just kind of grin and bear it. But had I known that something like this was around, this would have been a total game changer, because one of the things that kept me from getting help was I didn't want like weekly bills that I couldn't afford.
Yep.
I didn't want to deal with going to A rooms all the time, blah, blah, blah. And that was before I found recovery. So that one's kind of silly. But it still kind of goes back to like, it's something that normal recovery seems to be out of grasp for some people, because it does require time and maintenance and everything like that. And you have something that can help someone in 1 to 2 sessions tops. And whenever you first came across RTT, how did it make you feel as someone that was going through what you were going through? And you already kind of said that you wanted to use this to help other people, but what was your first, because were you skeptical? Because I would have been skeptical going through it my first time.
Yeah, I mean, I actually can't remember. I think it was even after I started learning RTT that my habit started to get stronger because of COVID. Like I started learning, I trained in the year 2020. And so towards the end of my training and my exam and my practice, my first year of practice and stuff, that's when because it was COVID, I was home all the time and I was doing like everybody else was, right? Just drinking more because you're anxious about the world and you can't go out and it's boredom and all of that stuff, right? So I kind of did it at the same time. But when I first found RTT, and I did my research for 3 months because I'm a very concrete kind of person. I am spiritual, but when it comes to investing and doing these kinds of things, I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon of the woo, right? I need there to be proof. I need there, and that's what's so amazing about this is it's rooted in science. It's rooted in this is what happens. This is how your brain works. And when I started learning about it, it's like, oh my God, it makes perfect sense. Like we are all born wired to crave connection and fear rejection, right? That's one of the reasons, or that's one of the ways that our minds help us survive. Is because our minds still think we are living in the Stone Age where we need tribes to survive. So that's why, as kids, we all have to do the same thing. If somebody has this brand of jeans, I need that brand of jeans, right? Or if somebody has this, I need that. Or if somebody has, Air Jordans, I need them because that's going to make me feel accepted. And that's the prehistoric part of their brain that's saying you need a tribe to survive. You need to be accepted. And if you're rejected, that's the worst thing because that's a threat to your survival. But now, I mean, we know that's not true. Like you can not belong to anybody and sit in your apartment. It's not going to be fun, but you can sit in your apartment and order everything off of Amazon and you're not going to die. It's life's going to suck, but it's not the truth. And this is why, also the number one fear in the world is public speaking, right? You've heard that people would rather go to their own funeral than get up on stage and talk to a group of people. Like there's that famous thing, right? And it's because there's that fear of rejection. But if you get rejected, it's not going to kill you, but you're not going to get rejected. That's the thing. It's your fear of rejection. It's that social anxiety thing, right? Where your brain tells you, don't go to that event. Don't go to that party. Don't take that class because you're going to be all by yourself. Everybody's going to look at you like you're weird. You're not going to be able to handle it because you don't feel good enough. You don't feel like you deserve friendship, right? Like all of that nonsense. But you only feel that way and think that way because that's the pattern, like you said, that your mind has learned since childhood, right? Yeah. If my own mom is rejecting me and not looking after me and neglecting me, what does that mean about me? That must mean I'm what? Not lovable. Not lovable, not good enough, not worthy of love, right? And those things stick, but they're so deep in our programming, right? It's like a virus, like a bug. Yeah. I call it a mental sliver, right? It's so deep. It's all those things are kind of hidden to us. It drives our actions and behaviors and decisions and our thoughts, but we don't and sometimes we think that way. But that's the mental sliver that doesn't belong because we're not born like that. We are all born knowing we're amazing. That's why babies cry in the middle of the night if they're hungry. They don't care if your parents have been working all day or need their sleep. They're like, I deserve to have my needs met. I'm hungry now, right? But then when that neglect and the self-doubt starts to creep in, and it could be even as something as little as a sibling being favored over you. Because your child mind, it's how you look at things as a child, from a child's perspective, right? That's how your mind learns. And as an adult, you can go, wait a minute, there's no Santa. I'm not stupid. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not unlovable. I'm not unworthy. Like, wait a minute. That's what I learned as a kid, but I don't have to think that way anymore. And when you do this work at such a deep level, your mind gets it. It gets it. I had a client who had a fear of public speaking. She was a global communications expert. Wow. She taught people how to speak. And she felt like an imposter because she always had a fear of it herself. And she had anxiety for days leading up to it and days after when she had to speak. And in the middle of the session, she went, wow, she goes, I feel it. I feel it sinking in. My mind is getting it. I feel that. And within a week, within 5 days, she was up on stage speaking, calm as can be. Because we just told her mind, no, that whatever you experienced as a child is not who she is today. So it's just such cool stuff. Like I said, I'm a concrete person. I needed to know this worked. And the more I learned it, the more I researched it, the more my mind was blown, going, it's so simple. Like you said, it's not complicated. I talk a lot about it because I'm so passionate about it. But
no, that's awesome.
Yeah, the mind is not as complicated as we thought. So anyway.
It just seems it's convoluted, maybe not.
Well, everybody's different, but it's very simple. The mind is there to help us survive. And it does that by keeping us in the familiar and away from the unfamiliar. We call that our comfort zone, right? Our mind doesn't want us to do anything new because again, it thinks if we go to a different part of the jungle, there might be a saber-toothed tiger there. But it's like, there's no survival risks anymore, you know? I mean, unless you really shouldn't be where you don't belong.
Yeah.
Like we all have to be smart about our surroundings, but it's not as scary as our mind tells us. And if you just kind of say to your mind, look, it's okay. I'm safe. I'm healthy. I'm safe. I know how to take care of myself. I'm strong. I can protect myself. You don't need to protect me. I got this. I'm good. Right.
Yeah.
And when you start to kind of communicate that to your mind, you know, and a lot of times I'll talk with clients and I'll say, okay, how does your mind, or how old does your mind think you are?
Ooh,
or
that's a good one.
How old were you when this happened? How old were you when this addiction first came to you? How old were you when this thought, this belief first started to be formed inside of you? I was 6. Okay. How old does your mind think you are now? 12. And then they start laughing. Like they just blurt it out and you go, wow. Like, or I'll say, I'm going to say a sentence and you finish it off with whatever comes to mind. And they'll blurt something out and they'll go, wow, that's interesting. Because, or I'll say, you know, I'll ask a question and I'll just say, tell me what comes to mind. And then my clients will say, well, I don't know the answer to that question, but this is what's coming up. And it's just their mind showing them and telling them what is really happening, how it's operating. Right? And when you're in that relaxed state with your eyes closed, then you can communicate with that part of your mind that's driving you. And then it'll listen back. You can say, hey, like you said, it used to be a solution for me. It used to keep me alive, but I don't need drugs or alcohol in my life anymore. I really, really want to just be myself because now I get that I'm pretty freaking amazing because I was born that way. Right? And I really want to get to know myself again. I really want to fall in love with myself again. The same way I did when I was born, before all of this stuff happened to me. Let me go back to that. Let me reconnect to the person and the soul that I was meant to be, not the soul that I was formed based on all of these bad things happening to me. And when your mind listens and hears you, the cravings start to melt because it gets it.
That's really cool.
It is really cool. I don't question it. I don't know how it works, but it works. I'm not a neuroscientist. I and I'm not even a psychologist or a licensed mental health professional, but I did spend hundreds of hours training in RT. Personally, with Marissa Peer, who is voted one of the best therapists in the world. I trained with her twice online in 2020. And then I went to LA to do a 5-day intensive with her personally in 2022. And she's just the best. Check her out on her YouTube channel. If you go to Marissa Peer, Marisa, Peer is Peer.
Okay.
She has an amazing YouTube channel full of hundreds of videos. Like, really, you'll hear her kind of talk about exactly what I'm talking about because I learned everything I know from her. She doesn't practice anymore. She doesn't even teach anymore, but I was one of the lucky students to get her last few years of teaching. So I feel
That's
really
awesome.
blessed. Yeah. And that's how I help people. That's my legacy and that's my husband's legacy. I want to tell his story. I'm going to write a book because he left me like, I have a whole box full of journals that he would write in to help him through his addiction. And I want to transcribe them and share with people what he was really experiencing because he was so good at articulating his emotions. And then also talk about what I do and like discuss what he was going through and how, like I say, if I only knew then what I know now, I could have helped him. So, sorry, I'm gonna put on my do not disturb again. We must be right up an hour.
Yeah, you're good. No worries. But that's really awesome. I love how you're trying to carry on his legacy as well. And so many people need to hear that side of addiction and recovery is what's going on in the throes of everything.
Yeah. If there's one thing, if there's one takeaway that I want your listeners to learn from today is your emotional struggles have nothing to do with who you are. Nothing. It is not your fault. It is your 95% mind that is driving whatever however you think, act, and feel. And that 5% that goes, I really wish I didn't have these cravings. I really wish I could just live my life clean with confidence, like a normal person. You can. You absolutely can. And it's not hard work. It's just going for a thought massage.
A thought massage, a mind masseuse.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All of this is fantastic, and I would love to have you on for another episode because it sounds like there's a whole lot that we can talk about, not just RTT, but anything that goes along with Al-Anon and recovery in general, because a lot of people don't know that Al-Anon even exists, and it's a huge blessing for so many people because it not only helps the alcoholic at home, it also helps the alcoholic's family, the drug addict's family. So also anyone listening, there are programs for people that are just associated with people that are suffering from alcoholism and addiction.
And it's not a pity party. I thought, great, I'm going to go to this stupid church and I'm going to sit around with a bunch of old women and they're all going to be sad and crying about all the alcoholics in their life. And I'm like, oh, what am I into? And like, it helped me tremendously. I was so pissed off the first day I went at my husband. I was like, okay, I was at that anger stage where it's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why, right? I still couldn't understand. And when I went there, there's people like me. There was people who were in crisis, and there was also what we call the long timers who have been in those rooms, same as AA, right? For years. And you just gain so much insight and wisdom, and you come out of that meeting feeling like yourself again, feeling empowered, feeling like, you still love this person. You have nothing against them, right? It's just, I used to say to my husband, it's like an emotional disease. If you are using, it's no different than having a cold and your nose is running. Like you can't do anything about a runny nose. What do? You just keep blowing your nose, right? That's a symptom of this. And so I said, this depression, the crying, the dark days where you couldn't get out of bed for sometimes up to like 9 or 10 days, and I just go to work and I'd come home and I would hold him during my lunch hour and tell him it's just something that's happening to him and nothing that he's causing, not knowing what I was talking about, just trying to make him feel better. So there's lots we can talk about, but I'd love to come back anytime. But if your listeners ever want to call me too and just find out more about what I do, they can hit up my website. There's a lot of stuff on there. Or just book a call with me and say, I have a question.
Okay. For the listeners, what's your website one more time?
It's advanced with a D, advancedmindhealth.ca, because I'm in Canada.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I cannot thank you enough for being on, because this is such great information, and I know that I'm going to look into it myself. And I know that there's going to be people that are listening that would also like to really look into this, because again, if it's a 1 to 2 session kind of fix for a specific issue, why not do it?
Yeah, it's a month program. Like I said, it's the
Mm-hmm.
session in 28 days.
Mm-hmm.
So, it'll save you the cost of rehab, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, that is for
That's why,
sure.
I mean, I work with a lot of professionals who can't really
Mm-hmm.
afford to leave work for a month,
Mm-hmm.
but just don't want to leave their families and their jobs for that long. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lot cheaper than rehab, let me tell you.
That's awesome. So, well, it looks like we have actually gotten to the end of the episode. So I would just like to thank you again, Diane, for everything. And I look forward to having you on next time. And for all the listeners out there, thank you for listening, and check us out again next week. And thanks for listening on WDJY 99.1 FM.
Thank you.
Sean.